are just moving through our introductory chapter, What It Does. We're on page 46, and we're starting with the this little subsection called the principle restated. Now, there's something that he says here that I think is just truly amazing. And one of the things that I notice is that every once in a while, Ernest Holmes will write something that he doesn't elaborate, but is so fundamental and so empowering if we pay attention. So just here, the principle restated. Let us restate our principle. We are surrounded by an infinite possibility. It is goodness, life, law, and reason. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. Therefore, it wishes to express through us. As it passes into our being, it automatically becomes the law of our lives. It can pass into expression through us only as we consciously allow it to do so. So most of that paragraph, right, we've talked about before already. And over and over and over again, we're going to talk about the qualities of the one. We're going to talk about the way in which we use the universal principles and laws. But in this little statement is this sentence that we have actually not heard anywhere before, and is so subtly woven through all of the science of mind that sometimes we miss it. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. So, we have to really stop and unpack that statement. To become more fully conscious of its own being would imply that without us, or self-consciousness, self-awareness, right? And we know of human beings as being self-aware. Obviously, there could be other places where self-awareness is also revealing itself, whether other places on our planet, whether, somewhere in the multitude of the galaxies of the universe, surely self-awareness is revealing itself other places. Because in expressing itself through a sentient, self-aware being, it, the one, the infinite life, becomes more fully conscious of its own being. Which means that without self-awareness, the one is not fully conscious of itself. It's simply expressing itself. It's simply doing what life does, which is impress, become, transition, do something else, right? And so this I cannot press upon us how important this is. How many of us were raised with the idea that we are children of God? How many of us believe the fact that we are created by God? Right? But all of that means that we're here, something is out there, and it went, oh, I think I'd like to have this thing, right? And made it outside, out here somehow, which is basically how so many of the traditions understand, especially in the West, we understand our relationship. And it's one of the reasons why you'll see as we go through the book, the word him gets dropped out and gets replaced with it. Because him is that sort of old idea of something, a being out there that has been projected onto a masculine figure and shape and definition, and that somehow we're products of that, right? We're children. But if you think about this, in expressing itself through us, it becomes more conscious of its own being, which is how we know that it's here as well as out there. It's here, it's in us, as us, through us, or it couldn't be expressing itself to become more self-aware. So by implication, as we grow and expand, as we become more self-aware of the spiritual truth of who we are actually expanding and adding to the infinite. Okay, I want to say that again, right? You're not trying to become more spiritual. You don't need to connect with God or spirit or that thing that's out that we think of as outside of ourselves. Do you see? It is us, and it's expressing through us so that it can become more aware of its own being. So everything we do is allowing the infinite life to be more fully expressed and more fully aware of itself, which is why it becomes so important for us to pay attention to our choices and to are we being aligned with the infinite love or peace or joy, right? Because it's becoming more fully aware of that when we make choices that are aligned with good, then life unfolds more effortlessly. And when we make choices that are purely driven by need or by fear or by other false ideas, right, then things don't work out quite so well and a big mess can be made. And so it is in our act of self-awareness about our choices and the way our choices unfold our own life is actually allowing the infinite to become more fully conscious of its own being. Because when the infinite is simply creating, right, there's no self-awareness of how creation works. There's no necessarily the same kind of self-awareness. Oh, of course there's consciousness and there's awareness, but the key is self-awareness. And so it is as we are in expressing itself through us, as it is us, and it's us already, as it is us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. So if you have ever wondered what your purpose in life is, it's not to be an accountant. It's not to be a good person. It's not even to be spiritual. Your purpose in life is to expand the infinite. That's why you're here. You are adding to the infinite with your unique and precious and perfect way in which you express yourself. And I don't mean just express yourself in talking, right? But express your life, the things that float your boat, the way in which you give your gift, the contribution that you're making, whether it's to your family and work and creativity and just showing up, how you show up, how you decide to be in the world, what you decide to care about, what you decide to contribute to. Do you see that expression? You are expanding the infinite itself, which is, of course, one of the deep oxymorons, the deep paradoxes of this being and becoming. We think of being as static. Well, it's perfect, but it's only perfect in potential. Perfect love, from the spiritual point of view, from the impulse of life, is only in potential, but that perfect love literally can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. And so it requires an infinite number of self-aware beings to infinitely express love, for the fullness of love to be expressed. And without you doing that, something is missing. that is the greatest purpose that we can have. And the more aligned we are with the recognition that Spirit is already moving in, through, and as us, and it is purposeful. Do you see? We can recognize that there is that within us which has never been broken, never been damaged, is always the impulse for why we want to grow, why we want to expand, why we want to heal things, why we want to be on a spiritual path. Because we want to, there's something within us that knows that we want to remove the false ideas and the things that stand in the way of us experiencing the truth of our being. And that truth is what then allows us to move into the flow of life, to be in alignment with that which is expressing through us. Not in setting ourselves aside, but in being the very stained glass that we are, through which the one light shines. Right? It's not about removing the stained glass so that only the white light shows through. No. That is what it's doing in the macrocosm. Now it's exploring, well, what if it's a combination of blue and yellow? Or what if it's red and orange and purple? Or what if it's this, montage of stained glass, right? Because that's what each one of us is. Something, a unique and precious, never to be repeated combination of impulse and tendencies, nature and nurture. It's ridiculous to think these things are in opposition. Of course, you have to have both. All of that, right? And then all the ways in which we take that up as we mature and become adults, all the ways in which we take that up, and all the ways in which we seek to grow ourselves personally and spiritually. You see, all of that is in service to adding to life, to the infinite being more conscious of its own being. I think this is truly one of the most extraordinary statements. So when I was in practitioner training, I had a lovely, lovely, lovely human being as a practitioner teacher, Reverend Ernie Forks. Oh my God, Reverend Ernie Forks. Okay, so Reverend Ernie Forks was this big black man, and he was like this teddy bear, and he gave the best hugs, and we all loved him, and we couldn't wait to be in practitioner training because we thought he was going to love us through it. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, no, no. And so we would write spiritual mind treatments, and they would come back. That's a duality / you can't say child of God. No, you can't say you're a creation of God. No, you can't say that. No, 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 no. Red mark, red mark, red mark, red mark. We were like, wait, we thought you were a loving teddy bear man. What is this? And he would, and this statement, and it's woven so subtly through all of this material, but I don't know that Ernest Holmes ever wrote a chapter on this. I think it was so embedded in his understanding that it doesn't get called out, but you see it over and over and over again. And so Reverend Ernie would say, okay, so what metaphor are you going to use? What metaphor are you going to use that you recognize? And so he used that was two entirely different thoughts. I just started there. Wait a minute. So Ernie would go back to the Platonic idea, which was reimagined again in Plotinus, the Neoplatonist, in this idea that rather than thinking of the universe, the physical universe, as Maya or illusion, which is what we get very much from the East, right? In the early Greek thought, in Plato and then in Plotinus, there was this idea that the spiritual realm was the ideal, the potential for something good, right? And that creation is an emanation of that. Now think how differently the idea of emanation is than creation of. Creation of, created, put out there it is, right? Emanation is like the light. Well, the light is emanating from the light bulb. Where does it stop? The light's all through this. We might not be able to see the light once it leaves the light bulb, right? But it's actually everywhere present. It's all here. And it is a part of, well, as we know today from the quantum physics, it's actually, one of the ways they're starting to get a hold of the building blocks, the deepest reality of what's making all of this appear, not just because we can see it, right? So emanation is a way of thinking about that we are individualized. Ernest Holmes uses the term, we are individualized expressions of the one. Not individuals separate from the one who have to return to the one. Totally different idea. Right, but individualized expressions. And of course, it's a complete paradox because we think in duality. We're either one or we're not, right? We're either together or we're apart. And so it's the same thing we have with we're a spiritual being, but we're also a human being having a human experience. And of course, quantum physics has been dealing with this when they realized that it wasn't that a wave turned into a particle, it's that it's a wave particle. Like that's one word, wave particle. And it simply has different ways in which it shows up, right? So the infinite life shows up in the macrocosm as the infinite, and it shows up individualized as each of us. And that is what allows it to actually become aware of itself as us. So you are literally the eyes and the hands and the voice and the expression of the one, unique and precious in the way that you show up. And so Reverend Ernie would press on us over and over and over again, how do you grasp this paradox that you are both individualized but not separate? That was a year's worth of meditation and head banging and and trying different metaphors, different ideas, and getting the red mark back. No, it's still duality. It's still duality. And of course, anytime we use language, it's challenging not to have duality. But what he was forcing us to do was to continually focus on how can we hold ourselves. And so this is a challenge, and it's a challenge for when we come into the science of mind. And sometimes what we do is we simply change our language. So we don't call God God anymore. We now call it spirit, or we call it the universe, right? And we change our language, but we don't change the pattern or the construct that we have in our minds about who we are in relationship to the one. So we can change the words, but without changing the construct, really nothing's changing. We're still thinking of something spiritual out there, us sort of spiritual down here, and we wonder if the two will ever get back together again, if we'll ever be able to be as spiritual as we want to be. But it changes everything when we recognize that we are already it. We're already it. We don't have to become it. We're already it. And basically, as Plato said, it's all learning is remembering. We're trying to remember who we are. We're trying to remember that and remove the veils of just biology, just the fact that we live in a physical universe and this feels different to us. It's not just false beliefs from childhood trauma and yada, 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 yada. It's also just the fact that our physical organ has been evolved in the space-time continuum. And we have all kinds of biology that has kept us safe and kept us growing and evolving until we became an organ that was complex enough that consciousness could reveal itself through this particular organ. Again, not the only one surely in the infinity of the universe, but we're here talking amongst ourselves. So we're the ones we care about. So I think this is truly one of the most astonishing and profound things that Science of Mind teaches, but it is a radical paradigm shift in how we think of ourselves. And if we do not grapple with this paradigm shift, we are essentially simply changing the words of the spiritual idea that we have about creation and the creator and what all is happening here, and then ultimately who we are. And it's just this hidden in this little tiny sentence.
Could you repeat that sentence again?
I will repeat that sentence. I will. So I'm going to just read this beginning paragraph. Let us restate our principle. We are surrounded by an infinite possibility, right? That's that infinite potential. That's what we think of as that absolute reality. We are surrounded by an infinite possibility. It is goodness, life, law, and reason. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. Boom. And then he goes on. It wishes to express through us. It wishes to express through us. Okay, let's stop there for a moment. The universe actually wants to be you. It wants to show up as you. Oh, just breathe that in. Like if you want to be loved, if you want to feel the love of God, Spirit, that how much more loved can we be? The universe, infinite one, wants to be you. It wishes to express through us. As it passes into our being, it automatically becomes the law of our lives, right? We talked about that. Now we're into the creative process. It can pass into expression through us only as we consciously allow it to do so, right? As we become conscious of how these laws work, therefore we should have faith in it and its desires. We should have faith in it and its desires and its ability to do for us all that we shall ever need to have done. Since it must pass through our consciousness to operate for us, we must be conscious of it doing so. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. Oh my God. Doesn't that feel like it changes everything when we just really own that? All right. I hope you had enough coffee to have this conversation this morning. So we're going to stop there. We're going to say hello to the fabulous Joseph, who is there manning our booth, and Richard. So good morning. Let's see what's going on out there on online.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Science of Mind class. I'm Joseph. At this time, we know this is an intriguing conversation. You guys can join in with your questions. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can simply tap the raise your hand icon, and at that time, I'll ask you to unmute your mic and join the conversation. If you're on Facebook joining us, feel free to type your questions into the chat, and we'll respond to you guys as well. If you're here in the room, you can just simply raise your hand, and myself or Richard will hand you a microphone. Use the microphone so everybody online can actually hear your questions as well. So, jump on
Yeah, so comments, questions, how does that land for you? Right, this idea, what does it stir in you? And yeah, so we've got a comment right here. So Richard, if you could pass it over. Yeah, let's see where we are with all of this. Say your name, please.
I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Please don't use the red pencil immediately on what I'm saying.
I will not. I will not.
Way back in college, I had no philosophical depth at all. But anyway, somebody told me about Norman Mailer. He made a comment similar to this. He said, God doesn't know the future. He only knows what each of us have experienced up to this point. And do you think that's true, that Spirit doesn't know what's going to happen an hour from now, but only knows what each one of us have created up to this moment?
Yes. Because this is where, okay. This is the gospel according to Petra.
Yay.
Ernest Holmes does not spend a lot of time on that because he thinks that too many people spend too much time on futurizing and they don't spend enough time creating their own lives now, right? Especially because of the strong influence of the Christian faith and the Jewish faith with heaven and hell and, oh my God, what's going to happen after we die? And so much emphasis was put on that. However, the one thing that he says, which I think points to the answer to your question, is he says somewhere later, we'll find it as we're slowly reading through the book, he says, nowhere in the mind of God was there a little airplane on a shelf that somebody plucked out of the mind of God. No, what there are the principles of aerodynamics, the principles of flight, the principles and the ability to discover these things, right? As consciousness begins to discover these things. No, we were the ones who created planes. Potentially, somebody could have discovered those laws and I don't know, come up with something different maybe. And so that's the thing of unfolding the infinite. That's the becoming part. And it's the thing that allows for this ongoing infinite expansion. Because if everything is already known, you now have a closed reality, right? Because everything is already known. And so if it's truly infinite, that's actually impossible from a philosophical point of view. More importantly, it would remove the opportunity for us to actually have choice. And so the science of mind does not has only two statements about predestination. The first statement comes from the Declaration of Principles that Ernest Holmes wrote, and he says can't remember the first part of it. I can't remember the first part of this sentence. It's escaped me now. But it's implying a fuller, richer, happier life is sure to be attained by all. Just doesn't say you're necessarily going to do it in this lifetime, right? If we're infinite beings, we have eternity to discover, to grow, to expand, and to express ourselves. And are we always only going to express on planet Earth? I mean, that seems pretty limited, right? Even if you come back here a million times, I mean, don't you think eventually you want to be a being of light? And so there was this evolutionary idea that we're continually evolving into different expressions. And so process theology, which we do get from the sort of progressive Christian interpretation, is very much marries the evolution of becoming with the absolute nature of being, and that these two things are always playing together. And again, if you think about it too hard, these are the kinds of things, if you think about it too hard, like your brain just goes on tilt, right? But our soul has a deep recognition of these truths, and these are the things you take into your contemplation. And rather than trying to think about it too hard and analyze it and how does that work? Because we get our rationality involved, which immediately wants to parse and catalog, and we get into, it's either this or that, right? It's hard sometimes with our very rational mind to hold a paradox, although we can, because we can experience the paradox in our contemplation. And so if we contemplate this idea, if we allow it to rest in our consciousness and reveal itself to us, as opposed to try to figure it out, right? We allow it to reveal itself to us, then we have that intuitive knowing, which is as valuable a way of knowing as rationally, linearly knowing about it, right? And we marry those two things together, and over time, we begin to have a better understanding of it. And so, yeah, in essence, we are evolving the infinite. Now, not everybody in the science of mind agrees with that or believes that. because there is the absolute nature of spirit. But if the absolute nature of spirit is coupled with a becoming creation, you instantly have something more going on than just the absolute nature of spirit. So, thus endeth the gospel according to Petra. But I think it's really amazing to think about. I mean, it's a really amazing question, because then there's so much more joy and possibility and empowerment and purpose to what we're doing with our lives. Every moment of love is adding, of expressed love, is adding to the experience that the universe as a whole is having of love, right? What an amazing thing. Okay, we have another question here. Joseph, let me know, do we have any comments out online you want to share with us? And we'll check there, and then we'll go to Gordon.
Actually, we do have one.
Okay.
One raised hand here. I'm searching. Let's see. I think they may have lowered their hand.
All right. Okay, well, if you have a comment or you want to put something in the chat, those of you who are online, please feel free. And please, Gordon.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Gordon.
Good morning.
There's a fascinating conversation, and I recently discovered the Law and Love. It's Ernest Holmes' writings. To me, is a real eye-opener, because he's giving these live discussions, and he's specifically giving ideas and examples, because he said we have to have more people that not only listen and understand, but actually put into practice these principles. And he was giving specific ideas about how he would express on demonstrations. And one thing that he brought out early in the discussions was that my ideas about the infinite is I'm connected to everything. I'm part. I don't just think small. If I have a business and I want it to expand, I consider that it's not just going to expand in this town, in this place. Infinite.
Yes.
As he says, the bigger you think. He says, now, there's nothing wrong with thinking small, but it's going to take you a while to build up to where you can think big. But if you can start enlarging what you think is possible, then the universe will respond.
Yes.
And then not only you're going to benefit from it, but like you're saying, the whole everything
benefits
from it. And it was a whole different perspective. So
yes, thank you so much, Gordon. And that's the book Love and Law, right? And it was it's edited by Reverend Marilyn Leo, who actually knew Ernest Holmes, grew up in as part of in and out of his household, his family, friends. And she took a lot of those excerpts and really tried to, help walk through this whole idea in a different way. And that's, I think, you hit on something really important, Gordon, which is why application is so important. Because if we only think about these things and we say, oh, that's nice. Wow, I love that. Oh, I can create my own reality. And then we never do anything about it. We actually aren't furthering the infinite. And so application was critical. It's critical in the science of mind, a practical application. And it also elevates, to a certain extent, it elevates everything that we decide to do, because it matters. Every time we hug our granddaughter, right? Every time we do something in our business, try something new, every time that we have an opportunity to enjoy a beautiful sunset, or everything, even though it appears redundant, has actually never been done before. And each one is expanding. And if we can, the bigger, Ernest Holmes says elsewhere, he says, take the highest idea of life that you have, whatever you think is the best life. Take the highest idea of life that you have for you and just begin to stretch it. Just begin to stretch it and grow it, right? Keep imagining if it were, and that doesn't mean more stuff. That means more fulfillment, more experience, more fully expressing without boundaries. And then we are absolutely adding to the infinite. Yeah, thanks, Gordon. And it's a lovely, lovely, that book itself, Love and Law, is a lovely, reworking with some of the writings of Ernest Holmes. All right, Joseph, I'm checking back in with you for anybody online. Okay, have more coffee, you guys. Have more coffee, those of you online, so that you can raise your hand or make a statement. Okay, we have a comment here in the room.
I'm Nicole Bett.
Hi, Nicole.
So this ties in really beautifully with a concept that I really like about how we have a responsibility to the universe to tithe our creativity. That we get so much out of it, and it is our job to contribute to that mass effort by just giving something. Give your words, give your art, give your math, take your brain and use it to put it together with 8 billion other brains and expand this thing that's ever expanding. And when we have this feeling of depression or purposelessness, just getting out and making a darn cat meme and posting it on the internet, just do something, just give back in some way. But as long as you're doing this lovingly, with kindness, with care, free of any malicious intent or spite, working with good intentions, I mean, that is good enough.
Yes.
As long as you are doing your best, as long as you're following that rule, just try your best. Where do we get off thinking we have any right to criticize?
Right. Well, and especially to criticize ourselves.
Yes. When I had heard that concept, all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, yeah, I am good enough.
Yes.
You guys can just do your best, and I'll do mine, and you don't worry about me.
Yes, right, Nicole. You say something really important. This is the thing that keeps us from this constant false humility. And even beyond that, the constant criticism of ourselves and comparison. It's never good enough. It's not worth it. It doesn't matter. And it really, I loved your example. You make a little cat meme and put it out on Facebook. That cat meme has never been made before. Or maybe you shared it. Well, great. And then somebody else new has seen it. And something has been expressed. And it has furthered, right? And so every contribution we make makes a difference, which also reminds us that it's not about getting. It is truly about expressing, which is different than giving. Too much of our historical traditions, religious traditions, have been give, don't think about yourself. Right? Which is martyrdom. And so to avoid that trap, Ernest Holmes, you'll notice, seldom uses the term give, because also it can apply, I'm giving because you need something, which means I see you as broken or less than. But if I recognize that what I'm doing is expressing my gift is by definition going to contribute. It is going to give to those people for whom it's exactly what they needed at the moment. They get to take from that, be inspired by it, be lifted up, have a little chuckle, whatever it is. Or just notice that somebody else, has experienced the same pain that they've had, whatever it is. Right? It is the expression which becomes the contribution. We are expressing our unique stained glass window, and that is furthering the infinite. It's beautiful. Thank you. Joseph.
Yeah, we have a question online here.
Okay.
Anita, could you unmute your mic and join the conversation?
Good morning, Anita.
Good morning, Dr. Petra. And it's not really a question. It's more of a statement, I guess.
Good.
In that, talking about being created, just another concept is that I like to think of it as being created within the very image and nature of the one. And when I do that, I can look all around me at how that image and nature shows up, and look at all of the unlimited potentiality that now exists within me. Because I am, as you already said, an individualized expression of that, and coming here suited up, showing up to be all that I can potentially be, and oh my God, the unlimited potentiality that there is.
Yes.
So,
I love that. Yes. Thank you so much, Anita. And that's, of course, part of where we see it in the, in the Western tradition, that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And what we have done is made God in the image and likeness of a human being, superhuman being, right? Which comes right out of, if you look at the images, or if you think about the images that so many of us unconsciously grew up with of God, it's really just another variation of Zeus from the Greco-Roman pantheon of gods, right? And so we can actually track the evolution of the idea of God as humanity itself has become more self-conscious, more self-aware, more aware of the way the physical universe works, the psychological universe works, the spiritual inner world works. We can actually track this evolution of the understanding of this thing that we've called God. And so to be made in the image and likeness of God means that we are, I loved somebody, I don't remember somebody, who knows, used to say godlings. We're godlings. We're godlings, right? Because we share in the nature of it. And it is through us that it is evolved and expanded, which of course implies that we have increasingly infinite possibilities. And the only thing that makes the difference in those possibilities is then our choices. Conscious or unconscious, right? We make lots and lots and lots and lots of unconscious choices. But we're still, or we're just running on automatic, which is a whole nother way of making a choice, right? Is to just run on automatic. So spend this week, take it into your meditation, just this one sentence. This is one of the most profound ideas. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. You are a gift. Don't ever forget it. So we'll see you with Reverend Patrick Harbala at our celebration this morning. We also have Kit Holmes doing special music. So we're pretty excited about the day. And yeah, lots of fabulous things coming up. So have a beautiful week. We'll see you when we see you next. Bye for now.